Tonight's lecture is, I guess, about target markets and identifying them and really validating your idea and assessing whether it's got legs or not. So, my name is Dallaway. I am one of the business growth managers for Grow Wellington, and I've probably assessed a couple of your ideas for the Bright Ideas Challenge as well. So my background is, I guess, in doing a couple of startups, especially one in the alcohol space. So I've done a lot of market validation, a lot of talking to customers and understanding how to sell to them. And tonight I just wanted to go through some key tips and suggestions, talk about identifying target markets, and this whole concept of I've got a really good idea, but what am I actually going to do now? How do I assess whether it's a great business or not? So we'll go through target market, then we'll start talking about market research. So why is it important, what it actually is, how you go about doing it, and kind of the concept that it's a process and not a task. And then Julia will be joining us a bit later on. So as I say, please do interrupt me for questions. Before I kick in, I wanted to highlight and start the discussion with some quite scary statistics, I think. The first one is that 90% of all startups fail, which is scary, if you ask me. That's really high. And hopefully you guys won't be in that boat, and the kind of work that you're doing through the Bright Ideas Challenge will help you avoid that. 70% of products fail, so it's not just the startups who fail, it's actually large companies as well. And the reason why a lot of that is that companies build the product first. They don't follow market-led innovation. So it doesn't actually matter whether your idea is great, whether you think it's awesome, whether you've had the pain. What matters is whether the customer also has the pain and whether you can prove that that target market has blistering pain and they want your product. And we'll solve that. I'm going to talk about a couple of examples through this. And one, thinking about the fact that products fail. Did any of you see cheese in a can? Yeah, a couple of nods. Well, a reasonably sized dairy company in New Zealand decided to import cheese in a can. Anybody who's from America or anywhere, I guess, in North America will know of this product. Basically, it's like, you know, how we get Swiss made, mousse in a can or cream in a can. Same concept, but cheese. And they thought that it would be a really good idea to bring that into the New Zealand market. It failed. Epically failed. You saw it in Pack and Save just dropping in price. You know, it started off at $7 a can, and then you saw it on the shelf at $5 a can discount. And eventually they literally were having to give this stuff away because they could not sell it. And what they didn't do is understand the target customer. While it might be perfect in America, New Zealanders have a slight opinion on their cheese, and we quite like our dairy. So it's not just startup companies who don't understand the customer. It's a lot of businesses, and what we really want to do is help you to understand your customer, understand your target market, and create a kick-ass product that's going to solve their pain. So, target market identification. Who out of the group here think they know their target market really well? You've got a pretty good idea of that? Who thinks they've got a fair idea on their target market? A couple of you. Who has absolutely no idea? I think you should all be putting your hand up with that last answer, because you can never actually know enough about your target customer. They're changing all the time, they're evolving, and it's critical when we're developing our products that we really understand this. And it's asking ourselves a question of who they are. The question of, why do they want my product? Why do they feel like this? Why do they actually want to pay good money to me to solve their pain? Where are these people? How do they shop? What are their characteristics? What's the size of the market? And this is actually probably, arguably, the most important section in your business plan. You'll notice in the template that some of you have read that I think it's point 2 in your business plan. And it really is absolutely critical to understand who your target market are and how you're going to get to them. I used to have a company called Dallaway, which was a pre-mixed cocktail company. And we thought we were pretty smart. You know, we'd come up with a great idea, we'd tested it with the market, we'd done a lot of market validation, but what we didn't do is we didn't actually ask them where they shop. And we were selling premix cocktails, cosmopolitans, margaritas in a 750ml format. And we licensed to DB Brewery, so we were working with a really, we thought, an expert in the area. And what we didn't understand enough of was how our customer, the question of where our customer is. Now, the females in the room, who buys most, where do you buy most of your alcohol? Supermarket? Supermarket? Yeah, a couple of you might go to liquor stores occasionally. But you can't, in New Zealand, you can't sell spirituous-based drinks in the supermarket. You can only sell them at liquor stores. And who's been into a liquor store and seen what they're like? They're dark, they're dim, they're dingy, and they're really tailored towards men. And it's not a place where women actually buy alcohol. So we completely and utterly, with the first launch of our product, missed our target market. They liked the colour, they liked the brand, they liked the taste, but we didn't actually know how they bought. And so asking yourself these kinds of questions is really, really critical. And so what I want to talk about today is how to find out about your target market and how to understand who they are. And that really comes down to market research and market validation. So as I say, it's the most important, and this is from entrepreneur.com. It's as good a definition as I could find. There are plenty of definitions on market research. And it basically says the process of gathering, analysing and interpreting information about a market, about a product or service to be offered for sale in that market, and about the past, present and potential customers of the product or service. Research into the characteristics, spending habits, location and needs of your business target market, the industry as a whole and the particular competitors you face. And it's a process, market research. It's not a task. It's something that we continually have to keep on doing. We have to understand our customer and keep iterating and developing to keep ahead of our competitors. And so the way we do that, why we do that first before we go into the way we do that, is a couple of reasons. One, it's the loud dollar problem that we had. We didn't know where we were selling to, so we had to absolutely change our strategy after we launched. We ended up going into bars, which actually ended up being a far more successful strategy for us. But had we realised that on day one, we've made a hell of a lot more money and we would have made it a lot quicker. So it's got a couple of purposes. The first one is around compensating for most of the risk of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is a pretty risky business. Starting your own company is pretty risky. And what you're wanting to do is at every step is to mitigate that risk. To understand that what you think you're doing is going to be purchased by your customer. And mitigating that risk for yourself, for your investors, and also for your partners. So it's that idea that proving that your idea is actually a good business opportunity and not just a crazy idea that you feel the pain for and you think would be great in the market and that the customer needs. It also helps save you money and time. That's what you know without longer. Create a product that the market actually wants. And finally, it's one of the most critical elements in targeting your marketing and understanding how to promote your product and get your product out to your customer and the ways in which you talk to them. You know, some products, if you're a seller, I was talking today to a company who makes doors and gates. And she's like, oh, everyone's talking about, Facebook, and I've got to be on social media. And I said, do people who buy gates want to be your friend on Facebook? I don't think so, but I don't know because I haven't spoken to your customer. And so understanding your customer and the way they purchase is critical with every step of your business. We all good so far? Any questions?
Yes. I got one question. You're talking about the customer, but for the business like this side, who will be your customer? Are the people who are paying for advertisement or are the people who are visiting your site?
Well, see, that's an interesting kind of problem situation, and it's quite common, is to have multiple customers, and they're both customers, and so you need to research and understand and validate both of those. If you think about Seek, for example, they advertise jobs, and so the person who pays them are the advertisers, but the people that they pay to see are the people who come and view the site. So that it only works with both in the market. So both of those markets need to be validated and understood really clearly. And that's quite common, especially with websites, because you might have a number of revenue streams. You might have advertising, you might have billboard banner ads, and then you might be paid for listings, and then you also might receive a commission. So you need to understand all of those different markets that you're working with. Cool. So, into the actual stuff that I'm going to talk about tonight. What is market research and market validation, and how do you understand your customer? So, this is a diagram that's taken from a book by Rob Adams. Rob is a lecturer, I think he's at Austin, Texas, the university there, and he's a really, really experienced professor in market testing and entrepreneurship. He was actually out here a couple of weeks ago, and we've had some really robust discussions around this strategy. And what it basically is, it's about accumulating knowledge and testing your idea. So we start at the bottom. So we start with an idea, which purely, and until you can prove it, is an assumption. It's nothing more than assumption until you can get some data around it. It doesn't matter whether you think it's amazing, whether your mum thinks it's amazing, whether your little sister thinks it's fantastic, or your best friend thinks they'll buy it. It's still an assumption until you can prove that there is a market opportunity. Often what people say at this stage is they say, but I've said to a whole lot of people, I've told them my idea and they think it's fantastic. And we call that the do you think my baby's attractive approach. You hold your baby up and you say, oh, do you think my little one Sarah's really cute? And everyone's going to go, yeah, really cute. Ugly. That's kind of what the idea is that if you let everybody know about your concept to start with, then you start biasing the answer. So what we need to do is put a robust strategy around it, and I'm going to go into some real big to-dos in a full list in a linear fashion. So we start off with assumptions. We then do a whole lot of market research. And this is a really important stage, is to go and collect data that is already out there. Because what this does is it helps you to round out your idea. So it's a combination of seeing what other research has happened, and also helping you to look at what the size of the market opportunity is. So really this is your desk research. This is going and talking to the people at the library, getting data off Google, pulling as many reports as you possibly can about the area. And starting to build that picture. Are there people analysing this market that you're looking at? Is there commentary happening? What are the trends saying? Are there competitors growing in this space? And that's kind of the platform, and as you can see we're going up the platform, we're building our knowledge. And then stage one is really talking to your target market. And that's asking them two things. What's your problem? And what's the impact? It's not saying, I've got this really good idea, what do you think? It's doing that initial testing. And it's really about drawing data out. Now this stage can happen in two ways. People chop and change. Sometimes you might do a survey to start with. Other times you might start off with interviews, but it's a process that you go through. And I'm going to talk through how to go through this process of doing market validation with the assessments and the interviews in a minute. You then move up the knowledge pyramid into stage two, which is really testing the idea further around the solution. So by now, after stage one, you will have an idea of what's going on. You'll have an idea that there's a glimmer of an opportunity, that there is a trend which you can leverage. Now you pose a solution and you start testing that. And then right at the top with the thought leaders. So quality influencers, just to clarify, are people who exhibit the pain strongly. They might be retailers in your space, they might be knowledgeable individuals. And then stage two, which is right at the top, is talking to thought leaders. So this is almost at the point of sales. So this is where you're looking for people who are really, really knowledgeable and have access to a large database of people. But right now we're probably just focusing, and I'm only going to focus on the first three today. Are there any questions? Has anyone been through this process? Who's done some market validation work of testing their customers and doing some surveys? Couple of you? Yeah, you're all just at the starting stage of this? Cool. I might ask you guys to talk about your various experiences in a minute. So, part 2. So this is the delving into it. So, we started with desk research, we talked about that. And this is really a fast triage of your idea. And what you're looking at is, I mentioned looking at trend data, looking at reports that are published already. Another really important thing is to think about, do I have the domain knowledge in this stage? And it's the restaurateur concept. I think I'm a great cook, therefore I should open a restaurant. Probably not the best plan if I don't know, if I've never worked in a restaurant and I've absolutely no idea how restaurants operate, and the fact that there's functions of different sales that go on with that business. If I didn't know the fact that alcohol is the only thing that really makes a profit for a restaurant, and I thought that I should start a restaurant because I'm a good cook, probably not a good idea. And so what you want to do is you want to be working in an area that you either understand or you can get the information about. And you can find people around you to support you who have that knowledge, the domain knowledge, to help you start that. It's like, right now I probably wouldn't go start a mechanics because I wouldn't have a clue what to do. But if I had a business partner who was a mechanic and I brought my experience of starting a business, that would be a great partnership. So thinking about, do you have that knowledge? Another part of desk research is really around market size, growth rate. And this is really important for your business plan in terms of articulating the target market. Can you prove that it's a growing market and that there's an opportunity? Trends, life cycles I've spoken about. But this is also where we start talking about competitor analysis. It's a really good place to start, is to look at what are the competitors in the market, how many are there, what are they doing, what are they doing wrong that you can improve on. And then finally, I mentioned before, is this market being tracked? So the second stage, and this is the bottom of the pyramid, is about listing our assumptions. And so what we do is basically everything that you think your market thinks or your product is, write them down. Every single little one. If you assume, say I'm making tea cozies. That's going to be my product. And I'm selling tea cozies to trendy, mid-20s urbanites who, are getting in on the vintage craze. And all of that is assumption. It's assuming that mid-20s urbanites want tea cozies. I might have done some good research in that there is a trend in mid-city urbanites wanting tea cozies, but it's still purely an assumption. I assume that they shop at, Icon Cube Street. I assume that they are majority female. I assume that they want it in red with white polka dots. So on and so forth. And literally, you're making a full list of every assumption in terms of your product. And really thinking in that granular detail. Once you've done this list of assumptions, we then work out what decisions we want to make. And the important thing at this stage is to not think about trying to test everything at day one. Often what you'll see is people go, okay, I need to know what price it's going to be. And I need to know, how they're going to buy it, where they're going to buy it. I need to know everything from day one. But what you want to do at day one is just test the problem. Talk about the problem, how they're feeling at the moment, and want to clarify that the problem exists. Don't be asking about pricing. That's the next stage of market validation. Step 4 is to gather the data and to do a survey. Now, this is where people get a bit stuck, because it's hard work. Well, actually, no, it's not hard work. It's just time-consuming and kind of a bit scary, because as entrepreneurs, it's talking to the heart, talking to the head. We believe in our heart, but we need to prove to our head. And we don't want the head to think that the heart is wrong. So it's kind of a bit scary to open yourself up to the possibility that your business idea might not be successful. But what you'll often find is that while your original idea might not be the best idea, there might be an offshoot of that which is far more beneficial for you to follow down. And so gathering data is there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can start off with a survey. And that's literally an online or a paper survey that you put out through Facebook or any form of social media. You email it to your friends. There's some really great resources that you can use if you wanted to do a survey. There's Google Docs do a free survey tool. There's also there's Survey Gizmo, Survey Monkey, My First Survey, myfreesurvey.com. There's millions of these. And you can basically type in your survey and then send it out with its own URL. So it's really easy to gather quantitative data. The other thing I'd recommend you do is not limit yourself just to a paper survey or just to an online survey. You need to get off your butt and you need to talk to people. You need to stand at the supermarket, at the mall, phone people up and have robust discussions with them. Because what you'll find with a survey that it doesn't tell you is the intricacies. Often when you're doing an interview with somebody or you're having a discussion on the phone, they'll throw something out that you didn't question. And that's why having a face-to-face discussion can be really critical. One thing to note with preparing your survey, because it's hard to work out what questions to do, is I've given you a bit of a 4-page guide on how to do this, is to test it first before sending it out to the market. So before getting everybody to fill it in, get it tested. 2 or 3 friends, 2 or 3 people you know within the market, and just make sure it's clear, it's logical, that they're answering the things you want them to be answering. Sometimes you write a question and you think it's really clear, but they'll come back with a completely different answer which is completely off track. And so what you want to see are those trends and what people are up to. Is that all clear? Are there any questions on the survey? I'm going really quickly over this, sorry. So, no questions? We're all good on how to construct a survey? There's heaps more tips in that around how to lay it out and how to structure it. Once we've done this, and I'd recommend, as I say, do both. You can do them in conjunction, you can do one after the other. Then what you need to do is analyse the data. And everybody asks, how many surveys shall I get done? How many people should I interview? And it's a bit of a hard question because it really depends on your target market and the type of business. If you're selling business to business, you don't need to probably do as many, and you can't be as broad brush. So if you're selling product to businesses, you probably can't send out a survey. You probably need to go and talk to them face to face because the likelihood of you having an ongoing relationship with them is quite high. Whereas if it's a mass market consumer product, you can just get stuff out there. So what you're looking for in terms of numbers, essentially, is a trend. You're looking for enough data to see that there are trend lines happening. You know, it's not 30, it's not 8, it's not 100. It's enough to see that there is a trend happening and there's an opportunity. And so that's where the analysis comes in. And what you want to be doing here is taking the data that you've got, and it'll be a combination of quantitative and qualitative data, and doing a whole lot of cross-referencing. Are there any trends? Are there any random abnormalities that exist within this data? Is it that 24-year-old males have a strong pain in a certain area, but everybody else doesn't care? And so it's taking the data and doing a whole lot of cross-referencing and having a play with it. I know that we've used in the past, if you find using Excel spreadsheets difficult, which to be fair they are, I know that the university have students who are keen to get their hands on data and to pull and have a play with that. So they're always good to have a chat to, and we can help with that at Grow Wellington. So really understanding the problem and constructing a conclusion off the back of that. Is there a market opportunity here or not? Now what often happens at this stage is you can often find that there isn't. And it doesn't mean that you don't have a business opportunity, it just may mean that you need to look in a different market. I had a company who was testing a concept for Wellington, and Wellington, the respondents really actually didn't have a pain that he thought they had. But if you tested that in Seattle or something like that, it would have been quite a different opportunity. So make sure you're testing those biases and outliers within the market, and getting a good feel as to whether there's an opportunity or not. And be open to the fact that it might change, that your idea might completely do a 180 on you. And that is quite common. You know, we work with companies who absolutely flip. They might be looking at manufacturing a juice one day and end up making an alcohol product or something. So you just need to understand and be open to your customer and let them talk to you. Make sure you're following market-led innovation. So once you've got to that point, you can now start talking about a solution. Woohoo! Exciting, we have a product that we can talk about. Until now, all we've been talking about is problems and impact and the base data. And now we're actually able to start talking about a solution. So make sure you've got your intellectual property tidied off at this stage, of course. And if you have a technical product or you're technically minded and you can build a prototype, this might be the right time to start building a prototype once you've gathered data and understood the market pain. And what you're going to be testing here is the value proposition. And Mark spoke last week quite a lot about value proposition and how this applies, and how critical it is to having a successful business and telling your story. And so this is where you want to be talking to your quality influencers. So you want to be talking to people who exhibit the pain, who are interested, they fall within your target market. And this is where you start doing things like, I don't know if many of you know about the lean startup philosophy, but you can start doing A/B testing and agile development, which is very much around the IT space. And really testing and playing with the market and understanding how they feel about the value proposition. What functions do they want? What features do they want? What colour do they want it in? So on and so forth, and testing that. And from here you're able to develop a business plan or a business case based on everything else that we're talking about, and adding that in, and then executing and taking the product to market. And so that's, I guess, a very quick rush guide into the steps behind doing a quick market validation exercise. And the thing I want to stress with this is it's not hard. It takes time, but just get off your butt and do it. And make sure you do it. You know, even an 80% effort is far better than doing nothing. And it's scary, and it's you know, and sometimes it's going to challenge your thinking. But you're far better off to do this because you will end up with a better product. I always think about Google when I think about market validation, because I think they are one of the best at doing market validation. Does anyone remember what was happening in the market when Google launched? Yahoo? Yeah. Who else was in the market?
Alta Vista.
Alta Vista, yeah. And what were those sites like? Does anyone remember?
Busy.
Really busy. They took ages to load. They told you what the weather was like in Mogadishu. I don't need to know what the weather's like in Mogadishu right now. All I want to do is search. And that's what they built the product off. A white page with a search engine. They understood the customer pain and they developed a product off the back of it. And now you can see with what they're doing with their future development, because they're working out how to monetize that. And they're also working out how to create new products off the back. And they've got Google Labs, which is basically their test bed for their beta products. So they're a really good example, and there are heaps of examples out there who do this really successfully. And it's worth reading anything by Eric Rees. He's got a great blog. It's on our website. And Rob Adams is another great one. Tony Sieber has a fantastic book where he does a whole load of analysis on some of the largest and most successful American companies. And it's really worth reading about how they've iterated and developed and pivoted in terms of their markets. So does that make sense to everyone? Are there any questions on that process? No? We're all going to run home and start writing down our assumptions and doing our questionnaires, I hope, considering we can't go outside because it's freezing cold. Cool. Okay. One thing I just wanted to talk about as well was market validation it's a process, not a task. And I mentioned this at the start, you can never know too much about your customer. You need to know everything and it will permeate. Businesses that are built on market validation are successful. And it's not to say if you do market validation your product will be successful, but it will hopefully help and definitely mitigate the risk on that. But this is the agile development process. And it's basically a market validation process where you start out with your idea exploration, which we've just talked about. That's your desk research, your background research. You do your validation, talking to the customer. You get continuous user feedback. This is really easy with web companies, with websites. It's a lot easier to do user feedback because you're able to change things about quite easily, especially if you've got a tech person within your team. And I'd always recommend you do. But what you want to be doing as well if you've got a product is to get customer feedback, to seek that, to go and talk to them, to continually be ringing up, make it part of your process to ring up a couple of customers once a month. How did they find you? How did they find the product? So on and so forth. And then you move around doing some positioning research. Where do we see ourselves growing to? New product development and brand extension, and then we start the whole process again. And so it's all about iterating and building products from the customer, not from yourself. It doesn't actually matter what you think. It matters what the customer thinks. And that makes a successful business. Okay. So just before I pass on to Julia, a couple of takeaways. Again, it's not the idea of this point. I don't know how many times I say this. It's the speed at which you're able to change and iterate and get to market. Your progress is very much inhibited by inertia, perfectionism and procrastination. So just do it. It's definitely better to do it than not. And there's absolutely no excuse for not understanding your customer. If you can't describe their hair colour, their eye colour, their purchasing habits, so on and so forth, then you haven't done enough. And you really do need to go down to that level because you just never know what random idiosyncrasies will come out of that data. Yeah, and as I say, it's not about you, it's about them. And that's really the critical element.